So, hello and welcome to another Tuesday night lecture series. If this is your first time joining us, and you're more than welcome. If you're watching us on the YouTube channel, welcome indeed again. We have about 20 weeks worth of YouTube videos and everything else to go through, so plenty to keep you occupied. Our YouTube channel, for anyone that is with us this evening, if you go to youtube.com/MUARC, which is the initials of the radio club here, Mid-Ulster Amateur Radio Club, MUARC Media, and that will bring you direct to our channel. So just before we do kick off, as I did say, we've been running now for about 20 weeks. And this started when lockdown really kicked off. We decided to go on to Zoom and have some topical discussions that everyone could join in on and maybe learn about something focused around amateur radio and other interesting topics. We do realize it as well, it's been 20 weeks, it's been a long time, and with that, we are actually going to move at the end of this month to once every 2 weeks. So we'll be having a lecture on the second Tuesday and the fourth Tuesday of the month. But if you're stuck for things to do on the first and third, we'll be catching around on DMR or other nets, maybe perhaps on HF or anything else. So that is the plans for the first and third Tuesdays of the month and the second and fourth. Also means you can take part in the Tuesday night competitions and contests there that happen on air. So it's a win-win for everyone. But it is going to take a wee bit of pressure off people going around. So from the end of September, we have Ian, who's with us this evening there next week, and then we're going to be going to the second and the fourth Tuesdays of the month going forward. But I'm glad to introduce to you this evening. We have Jon Hudson from the SDR Play team, and who's going to be speaking to us on the whole SDR Play adventure and everything else. And Jon, we're really glad to have you here with us. So I don't know if you want to say hello there, Jon. Introduce yourself there. Tell us even your call sign and a wee bit about yourself.
Okay, well, hi everybody, and thank you, Dave, very much for inviting me to this Mid-Ulster Radio Club night. And to be honest, it's probably that little bit distant that it would have been unlikely would have made it all the way up there. So, but we have done this kind of thing at local clubs, and of course Zoom is a great way to sort of bridge that gap. So I'm Jon G4ABQ. I've had my license for 49 years. It was how I got into electronics, and I ended up working in the semiconductor industry with Texas Instruments, with Cambridge CSR, Bluetooth chip company, and about 9 years ago took an early retirement and started to spend a bit more time doing other things. And along the way, because of my ham radio background, and I must admit I was a completely dormant ham, I'd done very, very little over decades, but it's in your DNA. And it's I had the great fortune, I know one or two of the guys from a company called Myrix, which is a semiconductor company, which some years back really cracked a problem which kind of went away eventually, but mobile phones, as smartphones were just beginning to come, were starting to have to receive all sorts of broadcast signals, ranging from long wave. You probably remember FM was the one that persisted pretty globally. You actually had your antenna was your headphones, and you had FM radio on, even on Apples and Samsungs. But obviously, as time went by, and some countries were watching terrestrial digital TV. The Japanese would watch TV on their phones on the way to work, on the trains. So Myrix really pioneered SDR receivers that were capable, a chip that could go all the way from like long wave to L band, and for in these very, very hostile conditions of but taking advantage of a nice big processor that was already in the phone. So Myrix, to cut a long story short, these engineers I'd got to know had also noticed some people actually suggesting that their SDR chip could actually be engineered into a more of a general coverage receiver. And so the biggest population that might be interested was the shortwave listening and ham community. And that's where I entered with my ham radio background, and we sat down and we came out with SDR Play, which I'm now going to tell you about. I'm going to talk maybe half an hour or so. I'm going to try and include some live demos, hopefully it'll work. But then there'll be plenty of time for questions at the end. So let me share my screen here. And also, I need to share where, I think if I share that, that's good. And at some point I'll need to share the computer audio, but I think it'll offer that. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, absolutely. We have the Zoom screen there up open at the moment. That's you now. Over onto the PowerPoint.
Okay. At some point I'll need to share the audio as well from the computer, but for now, let me just sort of take you on a quick guided tour of where we came from and what we do. So SDR Play, it's a British company. We're all Brits. The Myrix team, the core team, were British. So even the chip design that ends up in the SDR receivers was developed over here. We're a very small team. We subcontract some of our logistics and the physical manufacturing, taking the individual components, running the pick and place machines, assembling and testing the radios. Is all done in the UK. We have two subcontractors, one in Peterborough and one up in Hartlepool. So it's very sort of UK-centric activity. We have a registered office in Alton, but we all work from our homes. So we have a hardware guy who does a lot of the innovation down in Hampshire, down in Buckinghamshire. We have a finance guy in Buckinghamshire. We have our software guru who actually was supposed to be with us tonight, but sadly is rather ill. That's Andy, some of you may have heard of. He's in Kent, and our CEO and overall sort of innovator is based in Wales. And then in the US, we've got a couple of guys who do some of our videos, Mike, KD2KOG, and Steve, KI5ENW. So that's who we are, and we've been going 6 years. I want to just stop and pause for anyone who's perhaps not really got into SDR or lifted the lid on an SDR receiver or an SDR radio. So software-defined radio, really what it is, it's a communication system where the components that were traditionally implemented in hardware, so if you think of mixers, filters, amplifiers, modulators, demodulators, and so on, are actually implemented by software running on a computer. And so what the challenge is to have practical, cost-effective hardware. And I should say here, we decided to focus very much on the something that was kind of good enough, affordable, comparable with the kind of reception you would get on a typical ICOM Kenwood transceiver or receiver, and with a few extra bells and whistles that are possible in software in a way that those of you who have perhaps flex radios and some of the more expensive SDRs had already started to see. So So our mid-range SDRs, they all use a 14-bit ADC technology. Let me just bring up the laser pointer here. So this is kind of a simplified block diagram of our entry-level product, which is the RSP-1A. And if you think of it, the other ones just have additional capabilities, but the basic capability of an RSP, which by the way stands for Radio Spectrum Processor, which is a bit of a grand name, but we just didn't feel comfortable calling it a dongle because we feel very much this is supposed to be a big step up from the dongles, which are a great entry-level product, nice low-cost starting point. But once you start to get serious, the RSP is what we created. So as well as at the heart of the system is the kind of A to D conversion technology, a nice wideband ADC, 14-bit ADC, and then the interface to the computer via the USB. There's a tuner chip which allows you to select a particular segment of the spectrum 10 megahertz wide, anywhere from 1 kilohertz up to 2 gigahertz. Now, to do that practically with a minimum of problem of reflection of unwanted signals, we have, if you actually look inside one of our RSPs, there's a lot of discrete components and a lot of work went into the clever filter design to provide all these different low pass and band pass filters to, as you scan or as you sort of spin the dial, metaphorically speaking, allow you to smoothly go from one end of the spectrum to the other. In the real world, the problem with such a wideband SDR, it's a very sort of open front end to the antenna, is there are a lot of very high power broadcast interferers, particularly medium wave, FM and DAB. So we've actually introduced hardware notch filters, which really bash these on the head with 40 or 50 dBs of attenuation, such that they can't then cause mixing products and so many kind of phantom signals that might get in the way of the real signals that you're trying to see. So that's just a kind of the key points of the architecture under the hood. We have three products, the 1A, the DX and the Duo, and all of these are kind of glued together by our SDR Uno software, which is software we took over from an Italian company called Studio One about 4 years ago. And actually you had to pay for Studio One. It was something like $179, and you got a dongle actually just to, which was the key to protect the software. And it was the guy who developed it was getting to the point he'd really wanted to kind of move on and retire. So we acquired the software, and for the last 4 years, we've increasingly added features to it specific for unlocking the capabilities of our RSPs. One of the things that sort of sets us apart from a lot of the other SDRs, where it's quite tricky for a newcomer, you have to kind of start to understand about the local oscillator, the decimation settings, and of course you've got to hunt around to center up your screen such that a particular handband is neatly framed. So we have this band framing capability, and this is the 20-meter example. So you click on this the bands button, you get a drop down window, and you click on ham lower and you get all these choices of bands. Click on 20 meters, and then the main spectrum window is automatically set up to exactly frame the 20-meter band in a nice way to maximize the visual impact, which of course is one of the real key advantages of an SDR over a smaller rig that can't physically give you that spectrum display. The 1A I think I've covered probably the main points, but all the RSPs can make use of the UNO software, and also some independent spectrum analyzer software from Steve Andrew, which is really impressive to turn it into a kind of a lab tool. We also have a Raspberry Pi SD card image for people who are into that. I mentioned GNU Radio only because I'm sort of hearing it more and more. It's had a few false starts, but it's a great way, I think, to introduce some of the younger engineers transitioning from maybe just a computer world across to radio, because it's very, very much structured in a programming way whereby they can actually design their own software filters and so on, all the time using a source block which can use an RSP. This one uses a RSP Duo as the radio source. Another thing which again is quite unique about what we've been able to do with SDR Uno is actually to ensure we calibrate to within a dBm or so the exact power level that you're seeing presented at the 50 ohm input. So this is quite useful for using it as a field strength meter or as just an RF power meter. Always with RSPs, these SDRs, you have to be careful to limit how much RF energy goes in the front end, because they're very wide band. They're limited to 1 or 2, probably 10 dBm power levels for short periods of time, or we say 0 dBm, 1 milliwatt continuously. And with that caveat, you can measure the RF power levels. You can set logging data going and build a CSV file that you could use for like an Excel spreadsheet to do charting. And I mean, it really crosses the boundary into a useful work tool for anyone working in RF. Here's just a visual image of the spectrum analyzer function. Going up from the single antenna RSP1A, we have the multi-antenna RSP DX in a much heavier steel case, so it feels very chunky. And we've also added an additional high dynamic range mode for below 2 megahertz. So this is very much for LF and VLF, which actually sets it apart from the other RSPs. It also allows external GPS clock. And as with the RSP1A, you have 10 megahertz of visibility here, anywhere from 1 kilohertz to 2 gigahertz. So yeah, this is the HDR mode for the DX. And then the Duo is the dual tuner version, which, as well as giving you the 10 megahertz visibility, you can go into dual mode and have 2 totally independent slots of up to 2 megahertz visibility simultaneously anywhere between 1 kilohertz and 2 gigahertz. And I'll come on to say the sort of thing that means in terms of what you can do. I mean, not least of which is true real-time comparison between 2 antennas, because you can actually see the signals in real time, which is particularly important when so often you're dealing with sort of fading conditions and you're never quite sure if something else has changed. As well as having the ability to have 2 independent signals, the other key thing about the Duo is the possibility of diversity demodulation. So this is either adding together the best of 2 weaker signals, or actually using one signal to remove unwanted noise from the other. And I might be able to try a demo to show that in a minute. Obviously, monitoring 2 widely spaced bands is kind of cool. You can even mix and match applications simultaneously. So one, in this example, is actually looking at VHF air traffic control on 120 megs, and the other one's up at 1.09 gigs doing the ADSB decode of the telemetry from aircraft with all their positional and flight information data. This shows diversity tuning, and you get this rosette, which allows you to adjust the relative phase and amplitude of the two tuners that are now fed into diversity mode. So again, I will try and give a quick demo of that. This is the noise cancelling. So with this, you've got, and this was done actually, I think we had this set up at Newark last year. We were close to the Bonito stand, and Dennis from Bonito was very enthusiastic and lent us a couple of his antennas. And we had his mini whip, which was kind of indoors and picking up a lot of the noise and just a tiny bit of the wanted signal. And then outside we had a mega dipole on the other tuner, and we were able to demonstrate this in the pulling this weak signal out of the noise by doing cancelling. This is just a chart. It's on our website as well. That just helps you sort of see the difference of what you get for the different with each of the different current 3 production RSPs, which these have all evolved over time, and each newer one we learn from the one before, and very grateful to the community for sort of guiding us. Our very first RSP1, which came out 6 years ago, you know, it had some definite weaknesses, which over time we've fixed in the later products. So I was going to just give a quick update on the latest news on what we've been doing in SDR Uno. We released version 1.4 a couple of weeks back, and the big thing that we've introduced with version 1.4 is the plugin system, again, which I'll show in a minute. There's a lot of other things which are requests that people have made along the way. Things like being able to start SDR Uno with just a WAV file. You don't actually have to have an RSP plugged in. And all the time trying to make it more and more user-friendly. There's a lot of other improvements and fixes. There was a real problem if you had the volume above 50% in FM stereo. It caused all sorts of distortion problems. That's been fixed. So there's a lot of improvements. But plugins is really the big thing. And now on the main panel of SDR Uno, you get this plugins button that then opens up. At the moment, there's 3 plugins that we've provided ourselves, but already there's a couple of third-party plugins available. If you go to this page, make a note of sdrplay.com/plugins, we'll keep this updated, and eventually it'll become more like a catalogue of links to third parties who are working away on providing their software, working in a kind of more seamless way. Because if you imagine a lot of third-party applications rely on a virtual audio cable to take the virtual audio out of SDR Uno into their software, and that's fine, but it's a little bit more clunky. What you'd really like is to some of these applications to just launch within SDR Uno, and you don't have to worry about keeping track of different versions of the programs. So this is an example of a plugin which we have released ourselves. It's a DX Clusters plugin, and I'm going to try and show that in a minute live, but basically it gives you the annotation on the spectrum display of the real-time call signs that have been entered into the DX cluster system. This is an example of a third-party plugin. So this was developed by a guy called Chris, who allows you to take your memory list of program information and annotate those. So this is better for broadcast signals, which obviously persist, and you might have a very comprehensive directory of frequencies, basically a frequency table with listing all these broadcasters. And this just maximizes your chance of identifying a particular signal. Could be any of these that come up on this FRAN frequency annotation plugin. So before I just try to do a demo, I wanted to just highlight a feature that actually came in the previous version, which was version 1.3, and that's our integrated scanning function. So for those of you who are familiar with scanners, we've actually built into SDR Uno a scanning panel here, and you just click on the scanner config button here, and up pops this configuration panel where you can set your start frequency, your stop frequency, the step frequency, how long you want to hold the signal for. You set the threshold such that it's meaningfully picking up just not noise, and not so demanding that it can only get them if they're 40 dBs over 9. You can choose to wait on the signal as it goes along. So if a signal persists, you wait and hear it through. Otherwise, it just keeps going on, and it can actually write whatever active frequencies it finds. If you tick this box, it'll write it to the memory panel. And yes, you can loop continuously. So that's a real neat feature, which it means really if you buy an RSP, you're also getting a kind of scanner as well. So this is our roadmap for SDR Uno, with a few things that we're working on right now, which should come out pretty soon. And probably the most exciting is a generic scheduling function, because at the moment we've got a recording function. You can record a whole sort of IQ stream for playback later, but those are very, very memory intensive, gigabytes for a minute or two. We've also got a plugin now that will save a WAV file from a particular selected audio decode. But what we want to do is have a more comprehensive scheduling function where you can set multiple times of day, frequencies, modes, and it's going to be pretty comprehensive. So that's the big thing with 1.41. 1.42 is getting remote operation working. It's at the moment, if you have a Raspberry Pi, we have a TCP server which is cross-platform today, but it only allows access if you've got software that uses an EXTIO interface. So that's like our very old version of SDR Uno. Some of the other third-party software like HDSDR can work with it, but we need to get SDR Uno working with it. And there were some technical challenges to go straight to making it work, but by 1.42, we should have a really nice handshake capability for remote access over the internet with Raspberry Pi at one end and your SDR Uno at the other end. So that's 1.42. More stuff in 1.43, and then the big one, which we're heading really, I mean, there are people who really keep keep pushing hard for us to eventually have SDR Uno running on other platforms like Mac and Linux. So that's being worked on. It seems to be taking forever because often these other support challenges and other hiccups or things that we feel we have to do along the way have slowed things down to some degree. But that's very much our goal, is to really get SDR Uno to be a cross-platform SDR software. Right, I'm going to, I need to be able to share my computer sound. There we are, share computer sound. So, right, I'm going to launch, in fact, I've already launched SDR Uno. Could I just check, Dave, can you see the SDR Uno display?
Yeah, can indeed. You've just got the icon over the play button there. And we can hear that too, yeah.
And you can hear some sound. Good, that's really good. So this is what SDR Uno looks like. I'm actually using it with an RSP Duo because I wanted to just show the diversity thing. But even with the RSP 1.8, this is the basic layout that you would get. Obviously, you'd only have one tuner. And so I've got connected to tuner 1, I've got a G5RV. And tuner 2 is just a kind of random length of wire. It's about 60 meters long, I would think. So just a kind of long wire, not ever so high. The G5RV is about probably 50 feet in the middle. So in fact, you can see the difference. If I just press play. By the way, you can see the little step here, which is a VDSL interference, giving me about an extra 10 dBs of noise floor at about 3.7 megahertz. So anyway, that's tuner 1. You'll notice I'm in single tuner mode. So at the moment, this is just like having an RSP 1A. I'm now going to switch from tuner 1 to tuner 2. That's the long wire G5RV. The G5RV definitely doing a better job there. So the way it works, if you want to have two independent tuners, is there's an options button here for the different layouts, auto layouts. So I'm now going to select just the top half of the screen. So I'm forcing that tuner 1 just to occupy the top half of the screen. And then sorry, I need to just I'm going to launch a second instance of SDR Uno. Oh no. Okay. What am I doing here? A single. Actually, I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to just go back and go back to I think what I'll do is I'll just demonstrate if I go to diversity mode. So we've heard already in single mode 2 signals. If I then go into diversity mode, the software will try to optimize the signal between the two. Now, I don't have much spatial diversity between these two. However, because the weaker wire is picking up some of the electrical noise, I can go into manual mode, and then by dragging the end of this rosette, I can optimize to pull that signal out of the noise to get a better signal to noise level. So in theory, and it does depend very much on the fading conditions and the type of electrical noise, going from single mode on either one of the two independent tuners to clicking on diversity mode can give you an enhanced receiving experience. I'm now going to go back into single tuner mode, and just while I'm here, just demonstrate these band buttons I mentioned. So ham lower, let's go for 40 meters. You can see the big broadcast interference off the side, but here we are on 40. And of course, this is the great thing about an SDR, the ability to just see the signal and pounce. Here's a big one. So what I want to demonstrate now is the plugins. So I mentioned it comes with these 3 plugins. So I'm going to show the DX cluster, and by selecting the DX cluster, you can select multiple plugins, but we'll just select DX cluster. Turn the volume down for a minute, and then load plugins, and you'll notice this DX cluster window has opened up, which allows you to choose things like the actual cluster. I mean, most of these clusters are joined up, so you tend to get the same information, but you can put your favorite cluster in here. You can determine exactly where on the display the annotations will come, and also the color of them. But let's press start. Oh, I've selected a persistence time of 5 minutes. That means from the point where they appear on the database as an update, then they will last as they appear on the spectrum display for up to 5 minutes, and after 5 minutes they'll disappear. Now there's one's popped up, and obviously it's only displaying the ones within the band that's being displayed within the spectrum window here. So we're still on 40 meters, and you can see someone's put in IY to XZ. Yeah, so far there's 4 updates. I don't know. As someone mentioned earlier, nice thing about SDR, we're not limited anywhere between 1 kilohertz and 2 gigahertz, so we even have a 60-meter band. That's 80, 20. Oh, there's a 3 on 20. A Norwegian station. There we are, Peter. A KP4 and an LZ. So obviously during contests, this stuff gets pretty intense. So that's a demonstration of the plugin system. So I'll stop that now and just return. Let me just go back to slides. So I will let you ask questions in a minute. Just a few last minutes of just sharing some observations and thoughts and a bit more information about where to get help with this technology. Certainly, it's really coming at it from two ways. In terms of attracting the next generation to get into radio, there are a lot of cool things outside the ham bands which may actually be more attractive initially to people who then move on to the more traditional aspects of ham radio. But just the excitement of being able to download a weather fax. I think there's a kind of excitement about doing stuff off grid now rather. I mean, yes, you can do everything with the internet, but the internet isn't always there. And a lot of the fun of ham radio is, yeah, look, we're able to take signals and send signals around the globe to a large extent independent of local infrastructure. Obviously with satellites and stuff, there's a lot of dependence, but the fun that you can have just with some good computing power now and some clever software in terms of doing these other things on the side means that there's a lot of scope for fun. Obviously, pan adapters and a lot of the big three are all addressing this in their own way over time. But to have a truly wideband SDR from 1 kilohertz to 2 gigahertz, and actually have it hooked up with your rig to provide this really big panoramic display is pretty powerful, and the SDRs work well. Our RSPs work well with the rig. This is a sort of Yaesu options. I mentioned protection before, and some of the older rigs, you really do have to separately have some kind of TR switch unless you're going to, to minimize the chance of any damage. This is a Kenwood example. I've just thrown in 2 or 3 extra slides. I mean, great fun up at 1.6 gigs with a very, very simple patch antenna you can get from SDR kits here. You can pick up signals from ships at sea and messages which can be just sort of fascinating to view. I think I've probably already mentioned, but each virtual receiver, and you can have many, many virtual receivers within your 10 megahertz window, or in the case of the Duo, separated by much bigger space, but within each 2 megahertz slot, you can have running totally different applications. Here's an example with some FT8 stuff going on. There's some kind of SSTV decode at the same time. The geo-surveying satellites that are up there with these really high resolution images, there's software available to decode the high resolution images from these satellites. And again, these are like 1.7 gigahertz, where you can blow these up and you can see literally fires in California. You can follow hurricanes as they develop for yourself as the satellites pass over. So that's another peripheral, interesting hobby that comes for free really with an RSP. So we have a YouTube channel. with lots of video guides on that. We have an applications and support catalog with an ever-growing number of our own videos and links to third-party videos and documents for helping you. There's a news page on our own Facebook page. There's the independent Facebook group is probably the most powerful place for real-time help. Now, Facebook, love it or hate it, it's very difficult to kind of trawl back and find stuff searching in the mists of time. But if you've got a practical situation, like I've got this antenna, I've got this rig, I've got this question, I want to decode this signal, you just post that and you will get several answers very quickly from a very friendly bunch of people. This group was started by Paul Jones and Mike Ladd, who then later joined us in America, KD2KOG. And it's grown, and it's just passed its 14,000th member. And then there's a forum, the SDR Play Users Forum. There's a new one this year, which is a groups.io forum, which Ruben runs, and that's actually becoming quite popular. Each of these different forums has its own advantage. If you don't want thousands of emails, this one's not for you. This one's probably harder to navigate around. And like I say, Facebook is real time, but it's Facebook. We've also put a lot into our interactive technical help. We run a ticket system which allows us to give you one-to-one support. Before you get to the thing to raise the ticket, there's a couple of suggestions. We ask what software platform you're on, and we'll just say, look, just check here first. But obviously, if you don't find an answer, you get through, you raise a ticket, and we are religious when it comes to ensuring that we answer those tickets very, very quickly and get you the help you need. Here's another example. So going, technical help in the top left here. I've just lost my pointer. There we are. Technical help, that's the button to press. Up comes the technical help. And, you've got a 1A, Windows 10, it's to do with Uno. So there's some FAQs, links to videos and articles. It's something to do with software. You click on that, that will then give you another choice of things. And then in this case, if none of this is applicable and doesn't help, you just still need help, click here, you raise a ticket, and we follow it through. And obviously, we'd love anyone to buy our products. You can, whether you buy them from your favorite reseller, distributor, and in the UK, we have quite a choice, ranging from Martin Lynch, SDR Kits, Moonraker, and so on, through to buying direct from us, which obviously is equally good. But we don't mind where you buy the product, as long as you don't buy a cheap Chinese clone that's pretending to be some sort of a RSP. But wherever you buy it, we'll give you the direct support you need if you have any questions at all. I think just for the Ulster Club, Dave later may be able to offer some special arrangement, but that's only for the Ulster Club people. Okay. So this is the point really to turn it over for any questions, and I'll do my best to answer.
Well, John, fantastic for a start. I'll let you get a drink of water there or something,
Oh, yeah.
and you can get a bit of moisture down the throat after talking so long. So what I would maybe do now, John, if you don't mind, I'll stop your sharing of the screen, if that's okay,
Yes,
and then it'll make it a wee bit easier. So if anyone has any questions, and that they've been burning to ask, they can wave their hands or put up their hand, whatever. I understand that there's about 40 of us all, so we're not going to be able to answer all the questions all at once. So we'll try and make it as easy as possible. So if you can raise your hand if you have any questions there, sure. Or right, the first one I seen there was Les. So Les, go ahead there.
Well, first of all, thanks for that. That was brilliant. It looks like a USB voltage, a USB-C perhaps driven device, about 4.7 volts.
Yes.
What's the current drain on it?
So it depends on which RSP, but it's about is it 100? I ought to check the data sheet. I think it's between 1 and 200 milliamps. There's basically, and that's not including the bias T. There's a bias T output which can supply up to 100 milliamps stolen via our RSP from its USB supply to power a remote antenna amplifier. In fact, there's been more and more interest in trying to get decent amplifiers that can run at 4.7 volts, as you may have seen some of these loop antennas, the MLA30 and others, and some new designs on the drawing board, I think, are going to also try and do as much as they can with 4.7. It just saves having to have an extra bias T inserted and all the associated losses.
That's quite exciting, because the electric bike batteries from, say, Analog Motion now have a USB-C connector. So you've got the full power of a bike battery that would make this very portable.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm thinking for SOTA work, this would go well with a Raspberry Pi, wouldn't it? A Raspberry Pi and a little screen and a homemade QRP radio. Because everybody in this forum would know, I would say that anyway.
So I tell you, Les, you're the QRP.
Yeah, yeah.
Very good.
Yeah, the little guy in the corner going, hello, with very, very small signals, yeah.
Yeah. Well, especially with, the improving antennas, and usually it's the receivers, the weakest link. So
exactly, yeah. No,
yeah.
thank you.
And also, we like QRP because it's less likely to blow up our front ends.
Oh, perfect.
John, is there anything that the SDR is limited, that can't do? And once you've answered that, I seen Alan raise his hand, G4GNX, so you can come straight in there after John's mentioned that.
Really, I think it's probably the ultimate performance, because we're limited with dynamic range. It's probably stretching it occasionally in the ultimate strong signal, weak signal situations. I mean, versus something like a 16-bit ADC. We're just, but we're talking, really on the edge, and often it's mitigated by the fact that we can do more in terms of, notch filtering, special filtering, and obviously with the duo, what we can do with diversity starts to, it's kind of different. We can't transmit. That's the biggest limitation, and we're often asked, could we do a QRP transmitter? I think the problem is not so much that we couldn't do it, but it takes us into a whole new space, even a fairly low power transmitter, of really, when you look at the matrix of specs and, really what are people using this for, does it become a little bit of I mean, we've got great respect for there's the Hack RF, there's the Limes, there's some really neat, transceiver SDRs out there, but they only, and they have some uses, but they don't, there's still, the compromise becomes more. So we're not doing a transmitter in the near future.
Okay, got it. Alan, you asked your question there, and then I did see Terry G3VFC waving his hand there, so we'll jump over to Terry. Go ahead, Alan.
Okay, this question may have already been answered. You kindly donated an SDR play to our club at the beginning of the COVID problems, and I haven't unfortunately had much chance to play with it. It went out to members, and I've not seen it since.
Oh, okay. Well, I should get it
It's
back.
not lost. We know where it is. But I did notice at one point I was playing around, going all over the place with it, and listening, and I noticed we had a hum problem, which actually turned out to be the CTCSS tones from the local repeater. I wonder whether you'd actually curb the audio at the lower end by now.
I think there's a special option to filter that. I just can't remember what it is. But I'll tell you what, if what's your are you in the qrz.com?
Yes, I am.
With an email, maybe I can dig it out and send you see if I can find the exact software option. What's the call sign again?
G4GNX.
Golf November X-ray.
Yeah, the email's very easy. It's g4gnx@g4gnx.com.
Okay, all right. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, we can. Because yeah, it's there, and you just want to cut it out. So yeah.
Okay, and one other question, if I may, try and make it quick. Notice you were talking about older receivers, but or older transceivers rather. Let's say we're using a much newer transceiver. Is there a necessity to use some sort of PTT inhibit, or do you find it's fairly bomb-proof so long as you don't connect it direct to the end?
Yeah, the ones that are designed specifically to have a protected RF out for a second receiver are perfect, because you just connect straight into that, and that's protected within the transceiver. That's the ideal, but only a few of them are.
Okay, no, but you don't find a problem with, say, 400 watts of sideband, fairly close, but not actually directly connected. It doesn't do any.
No, if the thing that does the harm is having any kind of antenna connected, independent of what frequency you thought you were tuning your SDR. It's nothing to do with the tuning frequency. It's pure RF energy. You've got to keep the RF energy level at the input to the SDR below a milliwatt, below 0 dBm. And that's that. If you don't have an antenna connected and you've got a box, I don't know if you can see me, just sitting like that, there's no problem. We do recommend, by the way, the other thing that can be a problem is, if you've got thunderstorms and things and you leave your antenna, some people disconnect the antenna, which is great, but they don't disconnect the USB. And then what happens is when they plug the antenna back in, it's like a giant capacitor that's got thousands of volts on it sometimes. And, like a high static thing. And then you can zap the radio with ESD. It's quite unusual, but it is another failure mechanism. So it's kind of just practical common sense, but you won't have a problem with you've got a 400 watt transmitter. Maybe it's into a dummy load, that's fine, or it's out on a coax to a beam or a wire antenna. Where it goes wrong is if you have a wire antenna, just a piece of wire in the shack even, through all the outer coax and so on, if the power level here is exceeding 0 dBm, you run the risk of damaging permanently the radio. Now, there's a really easy way, just if you think you're getting close to that with 400 watts, you can run your rig down at, usually they'll go down to about 10 watts, not usually much below that. And just check very carefully the situation you've got with what you want. You may have a receive antenna you think is far enough away, but obviously the worst problem is down usually at the lower frequencies, because one wavelength is an awful long distance. But anyway, if you go onto Uno, like I say, it's calibrated power levels, you can actually see the size of the spike and just make sure it's not going close to or staying above the 0 dBm.
Okay, yeah,
So
that's very helpful.
I think if you think mostly, you'll be okay. But
okay, thanks very
Great. Terry, G4ABQ. Go ahead, Terry.
Thank you, Dave, and thank you, John, very much for the talk so far. I have an RSP1, and it gives me a great deal of pleasure, that with SDR, What I do notice is that the response of the spectrum display, and maybe I can draw it that way, it is curved down at the edges very significantly. And you make great play on the band select button, which exactly windows the band of interest. It would be rather nice if the noise or the received signals stayed at the same level from the LF end to the other end, and maintained a flat line, if indeed a flat line ever existed.
yes, so this is the compromise of the fact that there is a sort of 3 dB roll off either side of the actual sampling frequency, which don't neatly fit a particular band plan. And actually we have had some comments to that effect, but at the moment, so what it might mean is you've just got a few dBs of attenuation at either end where it's rolling off. Now, if there is a way around that. If you don't like the choice we've made for you with the band buttons, obviously you can set up your own by having perhaps a bigger sampling frequency and then using the span function to actually do everything I said you don't need to do if you use the band buttons.
That's right.
It
can be done. So
it can be done.
So I wonder if there's a change that you could make, such that the band button gave you the band flat.
I think.
Is there a disadvantage in doing it?
Yeah, I think only that you're maybe compromising. To automatically set the scan to be exactly right isn't easy to do. Having said that, in the future, I think it's 1.42 or 1.43, one of the things you'll be able to do is save. You get everything exactly as you want, and then you can save that, and it will persist and come back time and time again. It won't be a band button. But the other interesting thing is that now with plugins, I think the problem is we've only got we've got Andy and one or two sort of part-time help people, and doing everything is we're not going to be able to do that. But now with the plugin system, we're hoping if that becomes something, hey, that would be really neat. Yeah. Someone could come up with a plugin that is like, my flexible band plugin or something, and over time that might be a way to do it. But I do take your point. It's not absolutely flat for every band. And also, I mean, we do get complaints of why do you show the top end of 40 meters? And I say, well, in America, they do go above 3.8 and, yes, it would be nice to have 80 meter Europe but also, even people in Europe like to listen for their DX if they're listeners coming from America. So
Radio China is quite interesting, just over 40 meters. You mentioned Dandy is not well. Is that really bad news? Or
no, sorry. He was fine 2 days ago. I mean, it is a cough, but so I think everyone's slightly worried. But he's a lot younger than me, so I mean, No, nothing to worry. He's just got a cough.
Okay, thanks.
So,
I had him booked.
thanks for your concern. Yeah.
I had him booked down a year or two ago for a talk to the Marts, but then he had a car accident and then COVID came along.
Oh dear. Oh,
so
okay.
I'm glad it's only a sniffle, as Trump would say.
Yeah.
Great. Stan GI3WTG, I think you were raised your hand there. Have you got a question? Sorry, Stan, go ahead.
Working against each other. Sorry. Thank you very much, John, for your chat. Most interesting. I have a couple of questions that are like, I assume the equipment will run on any Windows computer, and also was wondering, can the software within the equipment, can it be updated? You say you're continually developing it. Is it possible to update, shall we say, an old piece of equipment to the current specification?
Okay. Shall I take those? Yeah. So the first point, we currently support all the way back to XP. Now, there may be a time when that won't be possible. We may be getting close, but as of today, you can download SDR Uno and run it on an XP machine, a Windows 7 machine, a Vista, or a Windows 10. So it's pretty good across all those. The thing always with Windows is to, keep the updates going. And I'll tell you one thing that happens sometimes, and actually this is a great sort of way to have a dedicated machine. A lot of people have got like a 10-year-old laptop, which is perfectly capable of running the SDR Uno, but they haven't used it for ages, and with Windows, you plug it into the internet and it kind of bursts into life, and then it takes a day or two to kind of notice it's about 2 years old with its updates, and there's none of this, oh, well, we'll have the update and an hour later it's done. You now have a few days elapsed time where you just have to leave it on, calm down, close it down, and sometimes it doesn't even notice. Then you cycle through. Eventually, you get these long updates, and often they're incremental, so they'll give you an update, but then they'll have to give you the update to the update. So getting a stable Windows PC that you haven't used for years isn't something you can do when you've on the same day as your RSP arrives and you want to plug it in. Just to say that. But when it comes to your second question, and can people take advantage of all the new software updates? Yes, absolutely. And we've so far managed to ensure that even the RSP1 users, like I've forgotten who was on just now, when last year we brought out this scanning feature, he just was able to download 1.3 version 1.3 with the scanner, and now plugins have come, and so with an RSP1 you can keep up to date. It become it's like having a new product. Now at some point, I mean at the moment we think everything that we're doing for the RSP family can still be there'll be limitations, obviously, because the RSP1 didn't have a BIOS-T, so obviously it can't cope with things like that. But insofar as its hardware is capable of taking advantage of the new software updates, then you can enjoy those.
Thank you.
Okay. Great. Connor has a question here, so we'll just hang fire for him to unmute. There you go. Connor, go ahead.
That's fantastic. Thanks very much. Yeah, that's Connor in Dublin here. John, that's fantastic presentation. Thanks very much, and very interesting discussion following on. I hope you can see me all right
Yes,
here.
yeah.
I'm actually lit up.
It's a bit dark, but
I'm lit up.
very clear.
Yeah, I'm lit up by a monitor. It's Simon Brown's software, but it's an RSP Duo driving it there. You'll be delighted to hear.
Excellent.
So my question is about the direction finding possibilities of the of the radios. I mean, with the dual inputs, you know, straight away you could, you know, feed crossed loops into it and do a watts and watt type direction finding. But with the phase coherent inputs on the duo model, you've also got the possibility of some kind of interferometry type direction finding. So I'm just wondering if that's something that's on your mind, or is that something that you see maybe the community filling in through the plugins? Over to you.
Yeah, we would love it to be the latter. And there are some people who've talked about doing stuff because we basically provide the capability, but there's a slight additional complexity of having to resync the phases are known, but they have to be corrected for in real time. We have got a technique that we think will work for this. We have on the back burner some activity going, and we would hope at some point to come out with a direction finding solution. I think when we brought out the Duo, we could see that was a very exciting possibility, but we're not ready yet to say 100% commit, you know, on our roadmap. Here comes direction finding, and it may need to be also make use of some kind of antenna switch, because we've only got 2 antennas if you want to have true no ambiguity of direction of and stuff like that. So there's work to be done. It's something that we know would be very popular, and but also I think at the API level, you know, it's possible for developers to take those streams and you know, deal with them and address the problems in their own way, and come up with something. So the plugin system might speed things up, but I can't tell you that, oh, so and so has got one just up his sleeve or her sleeve.
Yeah. Okay, very interesting. Is there much involved in the synchronization of the phase coherent inputs?
It's but it's not. I think I'll tell you what. Maybe we could swap emails. What's your call sign, Connor?
Yeah, it's EI4GTB or HZ1GT.
EI4. What was the first
GTB.
one? GTB.
EI4 Golf Tango Bravo.
Are you on QRZ.com or?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, maybe I can. I'll see if I can dig something out. It may take a few days, but if
that's fine. Very interesting. Thanks very much.
And
John.
if you don't hear from him, I'm on jon.hudson@sdrplay.com.
Okay. That's excellent. Thanks very much. And yeah, thanks to the crew up north as well. Nice to see you all. All right. Thanks again. Microphone
no problem,
back to
Connor.
you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Les, back to Les there. Les had another question. Go ahead, Les.
Yeah. John, you showed some really spectacular, for me, addition of call signs to the screen, identification of call signs. Where are those generated? Are they how are the call signs actually generated? Are they manually input when you find them, or?
Okay, so the DX cluster system is kind of a global collection of computers that are constantly sharing updates from participating amateurs. If you go to that plugins page on sdrplay.com/plugins and scroll down, there's a little description there of the DX cluster plugin system, and I think there's a link that tells you a bit more about it. I think it's one of those things that got a lot of interest, then it sort of went a bit quieter, but I think it's it's fantastic visual. It's sort of visually very, very dramatic, and I think, though I'm not a DXer or I'm not a contester, so I think the hardened contesters sort of have their own versions of this, and that's where the third-party plugin for them is probably more interesting, or in showing the possibility with something like the Fran plugin. There's a lot of scope for really on big low-cost HD monitors, peppering it with just the stuff you need for the way you work, depending on because often you've got multiple people listening in and picking who they're going to call next, and I could see it being used for that.
Yeah, is it just for Morse?
No, it's both CW and SSB and I think even FT8. But anyway, it's if you Google DX clusters,
yeah,
it's all, there's a lot there. I mean, actually, it'd be interesting, out of a sample of 30 or 40 people, does anyone else there, Dave? I don't know if you want to ask, is anyone else use DX clusters in any form? It's held together with Telnet, isn't it? It's been around quite a long while, long before all this graphical stuff.
I know a man that probably would know. Terry was quick to raise his hand there, but George, who's known for quite a few contests, would probably would be able to tell you a wee bit more about it than I would there, and how it works and everything else. Not to put him on the spot or anything, but he'd be my go-to man.
Just to offer that DX Lite is one such. DX Lite, Lite, and that harvests data from other DX clusters and presents it to you suitable for use on a phone. There's not any padding, there's no fancy stuff, it's just text, and it's very useful if you know who you want to talk to. It'll tell you where they've been heard frequency-wise. It's magic. Just while I've got the mic for a second, going back to the DFing aspect of the duo, even if there was ambiguity of is it behind me or in front of me, I think that would be ever so useful. Two people with that can triangulate, and please make it available when you can. That would be lovely.
Yeah, well, we'll try. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Andrew, Andrew there.
All right.
Go ahead.
Thank you, John. I just had another question following on from the TR switch. Alan asked, you sort of covered most of this already, but what I was wondering is, what would be the solution for a situation where you have two antennas, a separate receive antenna, say an MLA 30, which I have set up. I mean, if you wanted to other than switch it off, literally, can you do something with CAT? Somehow use the computer to put the transceiver in TX and also switch off the SDR play at the same time, or is there?
Of course, if you're going through a loop, an active loop that has its own electronics in between it and the SDR, it's probably that you have to worry about.
Yeah.
But the same principle applies. CAT control and all that is great from a signal detection and point of view. But either you have a TR switch that grounds the the active input, or breaks it completely. But that is it's a TR switch, unfortunately. There's no real way round it. If otherwise, your antenna will be there picking up the milliwatts. So that's it. And of course, with the Duo, you've got two inputs to protect.
Okay, thanks very much.
John, George here, GI4SJQ. Thank you very much for your time this evening. It's been enlightening to see the new features that are coming along with the SDR devices and the software. Connor sort of grabbed one of the questions before I got a chance there, asking about the direction finding, because when the dual receive version came out, that's the first thing I thought of as well. I'm just wondering, with the advent of the plugins option, is that going to be a way to add more decoder modes? I would use a plugin which runs in a DOS window to do DMR at the moment. And would that be something that would be much more seamless?
Absolutely. I think all the popular things today that you do with the virtual audio cable, then you maybe run DSD plus separately.
Yep.
In that situation, I mean, to be honest, I haven't got, one of my colleagues may have done, but I don't think we've got a particular relationship with the DSD plus authors, but potentially they could say, well, look, SDR knows this popular software. I'm going to now, it's really just a bit of C++ coding is needed to take an existing software and then make it appear as a plugin for SDR Uno. We provide a developer's kit, especially for plugin developers. And so the graphical user, they don't have to worry about the graphical interface. It's a basic, so the annotation you saw in the plugin I demonstrated,
yeah.
The basic ability to add text, to add lines, to, for visual representation is there. In the case where what you're looking for is actually just replacing a virtual audio cable, then it should be possible to directly take the IQ signal direct into the DSD software.
Okay.
So it never goes through an audio transition, because that's, it's a bit like acoustic modems used to be in the old days for computers.
Yeah. Just to follow up on that, I was looking on your website while you were going through the plugin section, and I see that there's the guys have written a plugin for the contour shuttle.
Yes, yeah.
Shuttle contour.
Yeah,
Get it right away. With plugins now, that one is a DLL file. Is that just dropped into the SDR Uno folder?
So the way what we say is put all your the plugins should go in a directory that you choose, and then in fact there's a little video that shows exactly how to handle the if you go into the apps catalog and just search for plugins, you'll see there's a short video, it's only 5 minutes or so, that just says, look, this is how to manage your external plugins.
Okay. Excellent, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, Alan there. Well, Alan, if you don't mind, we'll go to Peter, LB0K, and then we'll follow up with you. Just Peter, I think, got in just before you there. So, Peter, go ahead, please.
Everybody can hear me now. Nobody can hear me.
I can hear you.
Yeah.
Okay, good evening, John.
Hi.
Fascinating lecture. Now, my question is there a basic setup available for or in SDR Uno? The background for my question is that several relatively, well, say one relatively fresh and one very fresh amateur, each bought RSP DX and a Duo, one each, and they effectively had quite a struggle when they were starting up. It was a case where I couldn't help at all, and there was nobody else around here that could either. So I wonder if there is that, or if I can suggest it.
Yeah, probably there's a very simple setup video on the homepage. I think it's one of the videos. It's a little bit, the video quality is not very good and we do need to update it, but it's like using an RSP for the first time. That may be too simple. That basically says, look, you need an antenna. You need to, download the software. And what we've done behind the scenes, and 1.4 is even more kind of rugged in the sense that when you launch it, it should unpack in the default condition, filling the screen of a typical Windows machine, ready to go. And you've really just got to press play. And we do recommend the band buttons for the novel, just to get started. Just stay with the band buttons. So, 40 meters, it depends where you are, obviously, but in UK, you can always hear something on 40 meters, I think. Maybe I don't know, not in Norway. Sorry, not in Norway. No, gosh, you're in Norway, aren't you?
No, our favourite band here is 80 for the
80.
most part.
Okay.
Yeah.
So wherever, you can tell them, look, there's the activity. Obviously, you need an antenna that's reasonable enough to
Yeah, well, the problem arose really in setting up the software to start with, getting to know the places. And the restrictions due to COVID-19 did not help because we were effectively stopped from trooping up to the two dwellings to
help
get
them.
people going.
So I mentioned the technical help system. It's only a month or so ago that we got that on there. That now has some very, very good, short, sharp videos. They're also in the apps catalog if you just look for some of the newer ones, which talk about troubleshooting. And there's one where it just lists you may now, because this is where suddenly you get a little hiccup. For some reason there's a USB compatibility issue, or there is it says RSP not found. Well, the trouble is sometimes people think, oh no, and then they reinstall the software. They spend a lot of time doing absolutely and as you're getting fed up and bored.
And look for the help function first.
And just go to the technical help and just double check, because 90% of the stuff isn't something unique to them. It's someone's seen it before. It is a quirk, and it can be just a combination of other specific types of software, or something's been left in a condition, or maybe they had a version before, and there's just one or two little quirky combinations, but we try to address that. But I do say go through that, and then if they're still stuck, if you raise a ticket, even for a novice, we will potentially be able to get on TeamViewer and help them remotely. I mean, it's always a bit of a capacity issue, but there aren't so many people that are having these problems that we can't take the time to help where someone has, for whatever reason, got a problem. But
well, when the visiting restrictions are lifted here, hopefully next week, then we're going to be visiting one of these chaps.
Oh, good.
Help him on his way.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
And I'll get to play with an RSP DX for the first time.
Excellent. Very good. Well, you have some amazing propagation up in that part of the world.
Oh yeah, I'll better put up an antenna to find out about it. Thank you.
Alan, G4GNX there, you had a wee question. And
yeah, hopefully a reasonably easy one for you. It just occurred to me. I wonder what language you actually use to write the software for SDR Play, and possibly the third parties as well.
So it's a lot of it's in C++. There's other sort of special code for special things, but I'm not a software expert, so I don't know. But
okay, gives me a bit of an idea. I thought it might be something around there. Anyway, yeah. Again, thanks for a very interesting demonstration, John.
Good.
Okay. Anyone else? Any final burn quick? John, his hand straight up there. MI6XGZ. I was waiting on your question. Go ahead, John. See you, Terry.
Good evening. Thank you very much for taking the time. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, good, thanks.
Oh, that all. Thank you very much for your presentation. It's very educational. The first thing I just want to say is the filtration on it is pretty impressive for all the size of it. I was wondering, what is display distance in megahertz that you can maximum display? You can work on one screen. I use another form of SDR, which is one of those cheap Chinese dongles, and I was thinking about SDR, or thinking about the Play one, but I was wondering what the display maximum width in megahertz is.
So it's 10 megahertz is the maximum width that you can display, and the flat region is about 9. It just slightly tails off at the edges, but that does mean, for example, you can cover 80 and 40 and all in one go.
It's quite impressive.
Obviously it's and you can set up these VRXs, virtual receivers. You could have one for the CW band of 80, another for
well, that was actually one of my next questions. The VRXs, is there a limit as to those you can have using the one play?
No, you can. I think you can have well, you start to run out of computing power, but it's you can fill your screen with them. Yeah.
Right. Okay. That's an impressive piece of equipment. Definitely is. The diversity mode you were talking about earlier. Excuse me, I have to read it off here. The diversity mode. Does it work? Does it adjust your filtration, or what does it actually do?
The diversity mode uses a maximum ratio combination of the two signals, which are combined then in phase.
So that's obviously where the direction finding thing's going to be coming in. Then.
So that also should be beneficial for that for actually comparing the time of arrival of the two signals on the two paths.
I'll not keep you much longer, but I'm definitely very interested in one of those. I've been shortwave listening for absolutely donkey's years, I think, and I've only had my hand license in 2017, but definitely the Play seems to be a device I'll definitely be taking a serious look at now.
Yep.
I spend all my time messing about with Chinese dongles and updating the ones which have metal cases on them to cut down the interference, but definitely the way the filtration's set up in that one, that's very impressive. Thank you very much for introducing that to me. Actually, I was looking online quite a few times, and I didn't know enough about it. But now you've educated me. Thank you very much for that.
Okay, it's a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Obviously, realizing we've almost kept you, John, as long as your presentation. You've answered every question.
Well, that's fair enough.
Terry, go ahead there. You for your question, and we'll see where we are after that.
Oh dear, oh dear. It goes on, doesn't it? On the spectrum analyzer program, John, I see that chunks of spectrum, maybe 10 megs wide, are stitched together to make something that is effectively 0 to 2 gigs. But the chunks of spectrum seem to be displaced by many dBs. So you get sorry, you can't take a finger off the button, can I? So you get a lump and then a displacement and another lump of spectrum. I don't know if that's been addressed in subsequent versions of the software.
Do you know which version you're using?
It's not very old, I have to say, but maybe it's just too old. So
I know that was improved in later versions. The current version, I think, is 1.1. And it's actually 2 meg chunks that are stitched together.
Okay. Let me revisit that. If you've seen the effect.
Yes. The other thing is you do get a slight jump in between the actual filter boundaries. You remember that diagram I showed of the 12 or so different bandpass filters?
Yeah.
If you're spanning across a boundary, sometimes just matching that up just shows a little glitch. But I think generally, it's there's a bit of a compromise there, but
okay. I mean, it's still a very useful device. You know these things exist, so you can accept it.
Yeah,
if it can fix, that's good. And the other thing, when you are monitoring a single transmission on, shall we say, 40 meters sideband, you can't drag the, shall we say, the carrier point within the filter bandwidth. In other words, you've got to click outside of the filter bandwidth and then come back into where you think you really want to be.
So you're saying just dragging the skirt in the SP2 window, you can't pull it.
You can't pull the carrier point. You can't change the pitch of the received signal by dragging that line. You can certainly drag the filter skirts. That's not a problem. But if you want to move it by a few tens of hertz because you've landed on it, but not in quite the right place, you can't then move it gently. You use the scroll wheel.
You can use the scroll wheel and set your. I mean, if that's happening a lot, I guess you just would turn the step size to something very.
Yeah, but I can't do it if the line which represents the carrier is within the filter bandwidth. I can't drag that line. I can scroll it, but I can't.
Right. Whereas you can drag the other end. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway,
I suppose that's just a quirk of, or the fact that you've got to have an edge somewhere.
Yeah.
And,
all right, that's it. Thanks so much, John. Thanks. For
if I can think of anything we could do that might help, I'll let you know. But I think that maybe
Thank you, Dave.
Yeah, look.
Okay. No problem at all. No problem at all. Okay. Anyone else? Any final burning questions before we give John a wee break? No, I'm not seeing any hands coming up. John, from me, thank you very much for joining us this evening. It has been an absolute pleasure to listen to you, and absolutely fantastic for so many folks to join us. So again, John, thank you very much.
Well, thank you for inviting me, Dave. It's been great fun and lovely to meet you all. 73s.
73, John.
73, John. Thank you.
73, John.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, John. Bye-bye.